maybe I started from the height of seeing how it could work and then looking around at everything else that wasn't working in the industry and all the boneyards, so to speak, of research that didn't make it and dying in that valley of death that we all know well in our industry. That was kind of a motivating drive. It shouldn't be this hard. That was a founding principle of Integer.
There's often a massive gap between breakthrough research and tech that actually reaches the field. Incredible ideas are developed in labs every year, but very few become real-world capabilities. Duke Hartman, my guest today, has spent his career closing that gap. Duke is the CEO and co-founder of Integer Technologies, an applied research company tackling complex national security challenges. What began as a two-person founding team has grown into an org of roughly 80 scientists and engineers. Today, we'll talk about what it takes to scale a deep tech company, from those early garage stage days to raising capital, building the right leadership team, and now evaluating companies to support Integer's growth. Welcome, Duke.
Thanks, Catherine. Happy to be here.
Before we get into scaling the company, take us back to the beginning. What problem were you trying to solve when Integer Tech first started?
Well, I encountered the problem that we try to solve right out of the gates when I joined industry. I was working for a small company that had a lot of DARPA research and development kind of work. But what I found was unique about this company is that they had actually done the hard thing of getting software that emerged out of that R&D onto submarines, which I didn't know it then as a young engineer, but that is a really, really, really hard thing to do. And the more I went around and in industry, the more uncommon it appeared to me because there's a lot of innovation theater and a lot of showing of research progress, but
a lot of prototyping,
not a lot actually getting into the field, into the hands of the folks who need it. So that was my formative experience.
So it was disappointment.
Yeah,
a lot doesn't go into action.
So, and maybe I started from the height, right, of seeing how it could work, and then looking around at everything else that wasn't working in the industry and all the boneyards, so to speak, of research that didn't make it and dying in that valley of death that we all know well in our industry. And that was kind of a motivating drive. It shouldn't be this hard. So that was a founding principle of Integer.
It shouldn't be this hard.
It shouldn't be this hard. Unfortunately, it is. But so that was why we started Integer. And one other experience that both my co-founder and I had was, he's a research scientist, so got his PhD in naval architecture. Really spent time in academia. I don't claim to. I'll call it the more practical bachelor's engineer, right? So I had to build things and put them in the water and make them work as a young engineer. But the academia background was really important. And Josh and I, my co-founder, Josh Knight, and I overlapped at another company where we did work with universities. And what was interesting is you can find folks at universities who really yearn for something that is applied to real world problems. We're not just doing research for its own sake. Beyond the theoretical, I need to see my research have an impact in the real world. And not everyone in academia is wired that way, but there are folks and labs wired that way.
But I think we're all wired for purpose and meaning. And so many of us find that through our work that I definitely see how it could be very disappointing to not ever get those theories realized.
That's right. And I will say, the fundamental researchers, there's meaning there too, right? They're out there exploring the frontiers of knowledge, new concepts, new fundamental principles. We can't live in that world, but the fact that we are plugged into universities allows us to tap into folks who are just now realizing, oh, there's something here, right? There's a new thing that we've discovered. We don't know how to use it, but there's an interesting new thing, and our job is working with the applied researchers at the university is to point that new thing towards an application, a real use that we're aware of from the Department of War.
What did those early days look like? Was it really just two guys in a garage trying to figure it out?
It was rough. Two guys in front of a laptop just sweating over proposals and cybersecurity compliance and IT and contracts and all of the above. So
Proposals and contracts came off first. Yeah, that's it. I would have to imagine a very different skill set from what you'd both been used to.
well, we both had experience in administration, so I'd helped run, two other small businesses, and so got a broad business background in government contracting. So that was my kind of role in the early days. I was CFO, chief contracts officer, chief compliance officer, legal officer, right? Like all of those things. If you're bootstrapping, you have to do that. Um, so but very quickly, we were able to get a few contracts going and hire others and gladly hand off those hats one by one as we hired the smart subject matter experts.
At what point was there kind of wow, this might actually turn into a real company?
The first contract, I'll say, when the money actually hit the bank, yeah, everything's theoretical until that happens. Um, and we making payroll right for our first employees and being able to be conservative enough that like we can plan for months in some cases years ahead, which was and still is pretty uncommon for a small business. Um, so there were a few moments along the way where we just kind of looked at each other like this is working. Uh, I wasn't surprised. I was not surprised at
This
all.
is a good trajectory.
It was a really good feeling to know that we were on the right path, and then the quick validation of scaling up pretty rapidly over the following years was really nice to see.
Let's talk about the scaling. You grew from a two-person founding team to about roughly 80 employees today. What were the biggest inflection points along that growth path?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I think when you can, it's a continual process of letting go and finding and hiring great talent that you can trust, and letting go of control and responsibility to others as you bring them on, because you cannot do it alone. This is a fundamental thing. I always am in awe of the people who still think that they can go in and have input on every single thing at their company, and they retain control, and I think they don't realize that is what's holding them back. Um, so I will say the inflection point I think came in that process of hiring new people. We had a few hiring mistakes, I'll say, along the way, and one of the aha moments was we really need to define our values and who we are as a company and what we stand for, and use that to hire. Because again, our growth has been predicated on the quality and the work ethic of the people who come in the door, who we recruit. So making sure that that filter is really, really strong and accurate, to make sure the people who align with our values are attracted to us and want to join, and vice versa, the folks who don't align are weeded out.
So it sounds like that's your core hiring discipline through the scale. Do you align with our company values?
Correct.
You said there were some hiring mishaps. How do you tell that in an interview setting?
Tell.
Whether somebody's aligned?
Oh, that's a great question. You you ask them to give an example of a time when two values were maybe seemingly in conflict, and you find a way to. There's a lot of reading between the lines and subjective, right? But um, they will give an example of which value won the day, and that's a really important data point in an interview, because if you ask those open-ended questions related to values, people will talk. And very quickly you will get a sense of like what really matters to them, what drives them, and you can just ask directly, what are your values? Doesn't always work that easily, um, but you ask those probing questions about where there's conflict, because usually everyone can say they've got integrity and all these things.
They can tell you what you want to hear.
If the weather's fine, right? Like everybody's a great captain, right? But if you ask about those difficult times and things they've overcome, that's when you get a sense of like, well, which values really matter and which are subservient.
In terms of those early days leadership hires, obviously you're focusing on exploratory, experiential questions now. In addition to values, what else would you tell yourself in those early days about hiring those key leadership positions?
Um, find folks who have good examples of just getting stuff done, right? You cannot it's just a process of like, do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do it? And that last one is really, really important, right? Are they just able to get stuff done? Can they give you examples of remarkable things they've done in their career that prove it? And because, again, the full it's a force multiplier that you're looking for. You're not looking for someone who you have to tell what to do, especially in the early days. You need folks with initiative, right?
You don't have time to tell them what to do.
You do
It's a
not,
figure it out environment.
right? So you need an entrepreneurial mindset, right? They don't have to be an entrepreneur themselves, but they need to be open-minded and not afraid of risk and not require you to cut out the work neatly for them. So that's been a big theme. The autonomy and the self initiative. Those early folks, we could not have done it without them.
You've also emphasized referrals in building the team. How do you use referrals to raise the talent bar while still protecting the culture you've created?
I mean, I do see it as a virtuous cycle. So it starts with creating a good culture internally, right? And when someone joins the team and they look around and they see this is an environment where we've got ambitious goals, but we're allowing our people to take risks. There's psychological safety there in allowing them to swing for the fences. And if they get a strikeout, we're not going to drop the hammer. We're expecting those you to try and in some cases fail. And that we treat each other with respect and professionalism. And so if someone comes into the company, looks around and says, wow, this is an amazing place to work, not only do they want to tell their friends about it so that their friends can join and make the place even better, but they also want to keep the bad ones out. They want to keep the bad apples from ruining a good culture. So, like, literally, the people you hire become the defenders of the culture. If you've done the hard thing of like ensuring that what's acceptable and what's not acceptable is very clear to everyone. And so, I'll give an example. Our director of recruiting, who we recently recruited, Anita, is now a fantastic spokesperson for our values and wants to recruit great people because she wants to continue to keep the culture great, right? So that's it really is a virtuous cycle if you get those fundamentals right.
Certainly. Well done on Anita. Her and I have connected as well.
She's awesome.
Was there a moment in the early days when you thought, this might not work? What was happening at that point?
There's a whole personal side of business, right? Where especially if you're bootstrapping, you may be going into debt. Hypothetically, uh, you may be having challenges with raising children. Hypothetically, you may have deaths in the family. Hypothetically, so um, if all those things collide in one year, it makes for a hard year. So I would say you just need to be prepared. Like it's not a bug, it's a feature that there will be those days when you literally want to throw it all away. And the the only advice that I've found helpful for me that I'll share now is just do one more day. when you feel like that, just do one more day. Because if you can get past that acute longing to just go back to a safe W-2 job, um, you you will realize the benefits, and the benefits are just right on the other side of that really, really hard time. Um, I think if you're on the right track, if you continue, you just don't give up, you can't fail.
We're all people at the end of the day. Actually, a CEO of Powder River was on. She said, founding a company changes you. It changes your relationship, changes your marriage, changes your finance. Like you are not going to be the same person at the end of this that you were when you went into it. And not everybody, in your personal life is going to be along for the ride. So sounds like you've experienced some of those ups and downs.
100%. And I will say, again, founding is a very personal thing, but for me, I could not have made it without an extremely supportive spouse. My wife has been the champion. I mean, even before I knew that this company was going to be great, she's like, it's obvious that you're going to be great. Like it's a foregone conclusion. And I was like, what? So having someone who believes in you, who can be there, be your support system, be your cheerleader. I know it's probably possible without that. I know it is possible without that, but I would say for me personally, I don't know how I would have done it without my wife.
We all need a cheerleader. Looking back, what were some of the biggest pitfalls you encountered as you scaled Integer, and how'd you work through them?
Yeah, I mean, we are based heavily on partnership. So partnership with research and development sponsors, partnership with universities. We have congressional supporters as well. So that's a relationship, and like all relationships, there's give and take, right? You need to do your best to understand the needs of the other party and try to meet those needs, right? And vice versa in the process, try to meet your own needs, right? So I would say the partnership process and continually refining that has been, the biggest work that we do internally, because every university is different. Every research sponsor is different. So while there is a model that we feel works, it has to be tailored and unique to individual groups. And just like hiring, right? We have to define the criteria for what makes a good partner, uh, what makes a challenging partner, right? And so we've gotten better at that over the years of deciding um, how we can align our interests with our partner's interests even better than we have in the past. Um, so that's one. I would say the other, as we go to scale, is just capital, right? It's just a function of we're a bootstrapped business. The cash for investment in new IRA, internal research and development, or new product development, new opportunities, comes directly from the P&L, right? It comes from our revenue. So having a capital partner, we knew was kind of something we needed to do eventually, and we just happened to get lucky and have a really great partner in Razor's Edge, and we knew we needed that to compete with. There's a ton of VC and private equity money in our market, and so when you're competing against going toe to toe with other VC backed companies, you really need that dry powder.
It's competitive. You'd mentioned Razor's Edge. Looking back at last year's diligence process and your partnership with Razor's Edge, what changed in your narrative as you moved from selling Integer in terms of gaining those funding relationships to now selectively acquiring capabilities through M&A? You're on a different side of the table.
Yeah, it's been an amazing process, and I will say, like, importantly, the down select of the investors, right? I can't um, I can't emphasize enough how much that matters, because an investor is like a business partner you can't fire, right? So just be very, very careful. And we were, again, if you're a growing and profitable business, you have great leverage. You can take your time. You can be selective. And I do feel like we uh, We got an advisory board. We got a whole bunch of opinions and ideas. We filled the pipeline with all potential suitors. We spoke to all of them. And ultimately, what it came down to was, yeah, okay, price matters, that sort of thing. But in general, they're all going to be around the same area. You're viewed by the market, whether you like it or not, through one lens. What it came down to, again, was kind of culture and values of the organization, and what Razor's Edge had that I don't think many or any others have is this culture of entrepreneurship. They have founded companies that they ended up, one company, Blackbird, they sold to Raytheon for $440 million. That Peggy Steyer, one of the principals, founded. So you're not talking to finance bros and MBAs in New York who have no idea of the defense and intelligence community market. You're talking to founders who have lived it.
I think that's the complaint from leadership teams I hear the most often with a funding partner that isn't inside industry, because some of the expectations from typical industry versus defense, particularly in terms of timelines, are so different. So you're saying it helps hugely having somebody with that industry knowledge.
Yeah, it was night and day having conversations with Razor's Edge versus others of, like, we were talking about strategy and we got strategic insight from them every time we met. And so we were like, well, shoot, we can both get an investment and the strategic insight. That's pretty amazing. And I do think, again, back to partnership and relationships, if you're wedded, so to speak, with an investor from a completely different market, they just view the world differently, and they're gonna force you into short-term financial decisions that aren't in the best interest of the long-term enterprise value. So I do strongly suggest, like, taking your time with partnering with an investor and picking one that's in your industry, and ideally that has founders as part of their team, because unless you've lived that world, you can't get it by proxy.
Now that you're looking at companies to acquire as opposed to funding partners, how do you preserve the values that help build the company in the first place as you scale?
Yeah, and again, it comes back to, like, culture and values. So, like, we treat it kind of like an interview, but like a really important one, right? When we meet with potential tuck-ins or acquisition targets, because it's easy for me to relate and empathize, right? Because I've been on the other side of the table, like, less than 12 months ago.
That's not that long ago to have switched sides.
Yeah, exactly. So just to be able to relate, right? And again, my philosophy is, like, if it's going to work, we'll find a way. And if it's not, I'm going to give that person on the other side of the table the best advice that I would give, independent of our partnership, right? So, and I do, again, you have to believe in what you're selling to sell it, right? So I really believe that Integer has something special, and that we are starting to really make inroads in an area that is really, really strategic. So the value prop is not hard for me to sell. It's really just, is this a culture fit? And and because I think you can make the wrong kind of acquisition and really start to erode the culture that you've created. And so it's hard too, being a founder and CEO, right? There's a lot of I'll say pride in what you've created, and it maybe in some cases might feel like a step down to become part of a larger organization. But I mean, really, it's just you're going to continue to do what you're doing and climb the hill you're climbing, but you're going to have more resources and you're going to have a broader network, and we're going to help you go faster. That's kind of the philosophy. And I mean, again, that's why we teamed with Razors, and that's why I think it makes sense in the conversation with founders to team up in terms of M&A.
Nobody can have interviews these days without talking about the role of AI in your business and in the future. Internally, where is AI giving Integer the biggest lift, whether it's operations, finance, HR, tech?
Yeah, I'll pick two areas. One is just business operations. I mean, again, like everyone's doing this across the board. We're not unique in this, but just there's no reason I should not have immediate access to any piece of data and be able to do any kind of analysis with it for my entire business, right? So that's the mindset. Like I should be able to like natural language chat with me and the CFO chatting with the uh, finance bot and be able to do sensitivity analyses of like what if we win this big project and what if we uh, open a new office in New Hampshire and what does it look like when we hire 12 engineers at $200,000 annual salary each, and all these what ifs that we need to do, that needs to be instantaneous, right? And there's no reason it shouldn't be. And AI is making that happen for us. In we've got the traditional government contracting tools that the government likes to see, but you can build on top of those. So that's what we're doing with AI there. And then with respect to our tech, obviously, AI is a big deal in the defense world. Everyone knows about the Anthropic and Department of War spat that's happening right now. I'm not going to get into that drama, but we have, I mean, I would say before it was cool, have been applying natural language and AI to engineered systems, and so where AI meets the physical world, that's where we live. And so, like for ship power and energy systems, so we're talking large ships that are like small cities that have power generation, they have electric propulsion, laser weapons, high powered radar, all these things that need to work together using both physics based modeling, which is kind of one of our strengths, with AI. So we're ground truthing AI in like reality and physics. Um, that's a really powerful combo because then you can get the inference and the natural language interface and frankly like just the intellectual horsepower that certain frontier models bring combined with we're going to put it within bounds of physics and what our system's actually capable of. And so that's the combo that we're kind of deploying for the Navy and Department of War.
Certainly one. You said everybody's doing it, but I've talked to growing mid-sized companies and some team members say, oh, we can't do that. We don't use AI because it's not in compliance. What would you say to those individuals?
Find a way, right? Like so we have
you will be left behind.
We have this tension too, right? Because we are a cleared government contractor. So we have
I think that's the fear.
Yeah, no, but again, it's like no matter what industry you're in, there can always be the people who find a way to say no, and there are those people who will find a way to yes. It might require some changes to what you're doing. You might have to use an AI system over here, and then a one-way port of data comes into your secure system. It might take some intelligent design of the architecture, but there is a way. And if you don't find the way, you will be obsoleted immediately. So like it's not I don't see it as an option not to use it. And so we've been pretty aggressive about using AI in a compliant fashion, right?
Before I let you go, if you could go back to the very beginning when it was just a couple of people and an idea, what do you wish you understood about building and scaling a company that you learned only the hard way?
I'm probably a broken record at this point, but the values piece would have saved us a lot of heartache and hand wringing and uh, you know uh, mistakes on the hiring front.
At what point did you realize that?
I would say 2.5 years ago. Yeah, about midway through our 5-year journey here. We just passed our fifth birthday. Um, so yeah, the pain was intense, and I was seeking help, frankly. So we started EOS. It's a system for small and medium businesses to kind of operate. And the implementer Megan, her insistence on this values piece really like drove home that, oh my gosh, we already have these values. They're there. We haven't made them explicit.
Why do we have to write them down? Even when I was launching El Rey, my coach said, okay, take a day and focus entirely on your values. And I'm like, it's me and 2 employees. We've known each other forever. Like, of course they know our values, but you're saying do not skip that step.
Correct. Don't skip it. I do think, again, it might seem touchy-feely. It is not. It is so critical. And you may need to, again, fail and come into contact with reality, and that'll show you, oh, this isn't really an important value, where it's not exactly that. It's maybe a little bit of this. So refine them. I don't think that's a bad thing. But making sure that you define the culture you want to create and the things that are important about that culture has been the difference maker. As soon as we really figured that out, it clicked into place, and that's when I feel like growth really took off, because people were empowered. Like, I'm staying within these values, and I know the overall goals of the company. I'm going to run. And once you have like intelligent, hardworking folks with integrity just running, who are collaborating with their teammates and going, like, you are consistently shocked at the progress that they will make. So that's been the coolest thing, just to observe engineers and others who have just surprised me in how quickly they've grown in their own professional development. It's really fun to
That's
watch.
got to be fun to see. Well, happy 5th anniversary, Duke, to you and Integer. Can't wait to see what you'll be doing in the next 5 years.
Thank you, Catherine. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.